first big topic for the day. We'll see if we can try to keep things somewhat on track, but it is involving Dead Cells. This has been a game that we've all been, or at least I've been really looking forward to. I know Goder's been playing it as well. But unfortunately, our topic is not about the gameplay, but about the reviews. So it was revealed this past week that the Nintendo editor or reviewer from IGN basically copied his review from a YouTuber. And when you watch like the comparison videos, it looks almost note for note. Maybe a few words are changed here and there, but a lot of the methodology of what the YouTuber described the game as, the IGN editor did as well. And of course, whenever we talk controversy in IGN, it basically causes a storm of people coming out of the woodworks. There's, of course, the infamous Pokemon review, God Hand. I'm sure there's been a few other reviews that have caused people to raise a stink eye at IGN. But, again, it causes that discussion about plagiarism and about what it means to write these reviews or be a reviewer for a living, I guess. So, I guess, what do you think about this, Rob?
Well, I mean, I'm actually more interested to hear your opinion on this as a professional game reviewer and just knowledgeable games person in general. But like as someone who depends on reviews and stuff to buy games and just often just watches YouTube videos about games in general, like it's disheartening, especially since it kind of makes me think, well, certainly IGN being a huge stage, this probably happens a lot for people who are trying to be content creators on the internet. You don't necessarily get a chance to play every game, but you want to have opinions about the popular ones, don't you? So, stealing from somebody else is probably the easiest way to do that. And yeah, boy, getting to this kind of a high level is it's kind of painful.
Yeah, and usually when we talk about review controversy, it has to do with like the reviewer being paid to review a game or stuff like that, or the review being taken down because it's too low, like the infamous Kane and Lynch review from GameSpot. But yeah, review plagiarism is certainly an interesting thing, and I think it goes back to like how I really don't follow a lot of YouTubers or reviewers when it comes to what they think about games. I just try to keep things to myself. And I think that's kind of helped me because I can kind of avoid being colored by somebody else's review.
And that's the whole point, right? I mean, a review is that person's thoughts on the game. Why would you go out and see someone else's thoughts before you have your own? Like, I would not want you to look at a whole bunch of reviews and then come up with your own. I mean, that's everyone's got opinions. Why not? I mean, why not take advantage of you having an opinion? At least if you can't play the game, watch the trailer and come up with an opinion there. But it's a little disheartening that someone would have no opinion enough to steal someone else's.
Yeah, and there's just so many ways you could really avoid that. I mean, when you watch that video, the comparison video, it just seems like somebody's copying the YouTuber's work. And like you said, Rob, there's already hundreds of thousands of opinions on the internet already. It shouldn't be that hard to make your own. And even when I watch people do speed runs or let's plays of games, I wait until I'm finished with that game before I would watch someone else on, because I don't want their experience to then color what I'm doing in the same game.
You're just a purist in that particular sense.
And that will probably be a big lead-in to when we talk about our next topic later on our stream. But this goes back to what I was saying. Like, somebody came on the other night and asked me who's my favorite YouTuber, and I don't really watch other YouTubers. And that's the thing. I don't really care about somebody else's thoughts on video games all that much, just because I'm spending so much time playing them myself.
Well, I mean that's true, right? I mean, as given what you do, you're not a consumer of it. You're a provider, and certainly checking in on other people's work could help in some regards, but like no one's asking you to do that. You come to you for yourself. But it's an interesting question when someone asks about your favorite YouTuber, because that's like asking me my favorite channel, or like it doesn't make too much sense because YouTubers do very different content from person
Mm-hmm.
to person. Like I watch a particular YouTube channel because he does all kinds of weird Marvel runs, and like, is he himself entertaining? I don't know. He doesn't talk. He just shows this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the content is more important to me than the personality or the host or
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But the echo chamber, yes, that's a good argument, Gordo,
Mm-hmm.
to against what you're saying, Josh,
Mm-hmm.
um, because it does limit you in a lot of ways, but at the same time, it's important for
Yeah.
especially for reviews, and for someone who plays games in terms of like speedruns and stuff. Sometimes I would think it might be helpful to know a trick or two,
Mm-hmm.
but your raw skills alone are entertaining enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, that's the weird thing about that kind of echo chamber effect is that how it's kind of a mixed bag because you need to be as open when it comes to game development, but when it comes to doing content provided, like as Chow says, like when it comes to being like on YouTube or being on Twitch, you really have to be your own person, especially today with everybody doing the same thing. Like if we, like as we talked about before with Fortnite, like if you want to become a Fortnite streamer, you better do something a whole lot different compared to Ninja or Doctor Disrespect or whoever the other big names, because you're
Hmm.
just going to be swallowed up in the sea of imitators and copycats.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good point, Chad, because it's one of those things that I don't have that perspective, so it's a little difficult for me to understand it, in terms of watching for the host or the personality, specifically. But yeah, with something like Fortnite, I mean, if you're a content creator, you really do have to take big strides to come up with your own angle.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when you pick the popular thing, it's almost impossible to get a leg up on the competition in that regard.
Mm-hmm. And like we see this a lot on YouTube. Like again, I can always track what the new game release is because you'll see like half a dozen YouTubers make the same exact thumbnail art and play the game exactly the same way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When they that is a tough part,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, they're watching the content and trying to make their own content, and in a lot of ways, I feel like that's just how.
Mm-hmm.
When you're trying to be, good at one particular thing, whether it be music or art or whatever, your first step is to copy.
Mm-hmm.
Get a favorite and copy it. Like when I learned the bass years ago, and I haven't played in like 15 years, but like my first thing was to listen to Primus and play all of the songs on Frizzle Fry, the album, until I got good and could start kind of branching out on my own. But there's that interesting like beginnings, and I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
YouTubers are very, young these days, teenagers, and so they got to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But it lends to a ridiculous amount of like the YouTube version of shovelware. It's just the same thing everywhere, and it's usually low quality at first. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. It's a weird kind of dynamic out there.
Yeah, and like at the end of the day, though, as you said, you have to start somewhere, but at some point, you need to transition into your own voice, your own element there. I
Yeah, if that's what you want to do, you absolutely have to get your own brand.
hmm I think I was kind of lucky in that regard because I focus on such a very niche topic. We're talking about game design topics and game theory like that. There aren't a lot of people who do it, not at this level or not in this kind of discussion. So I can. It made it very easy for me to find my own voice. Now it's kind of like I'm working in reverse. Now I have to figure out how to make that as a brand.
Yeah, and that is a benefit on your end. Certainly, there really isn't that much quality review and deep diving into games
Mm-hmm.
as you have, and that is a very good thing to have, is that knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
background, because that in itself is a good place to start. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking to be the entertainer, gosh, watching Ninja's path in particular, right?
Mm-hmm.
From a pro gamer to like mega streamer personality,
Mm-hmm.
that's a path that's going to be impossible for anyone else to really copy.
Hmm.
But and then all the other really really popular YouTubers, and I don't know all of them, but they've had their roots from years and years ago, right? So anyone starting now, I mean, unless they have that hook, and for you, I don't know if I'd call it a hook so much as just, I mean, it doesn't feel fake like I would
Hmm.
consider a hook to be, which is just a weird term.
Yeah.
But coming from just wanting to be, just have a YouTube channel, that's kind of a weird place to start. And well, which is weird because that's kind of where I started. It's like, oh, I kind of want to stream games, and then I just
Yeah.
started streaming for no reason at all, and here I am, not streaming at all anymore.
Hmm. But yet, like as you said, like having that personality and trying to develop that, like if you're trying to be completely against yourself, it's going to make things a lot harder for you. We talked about this before when we did like a whole theory of life when we were playing Bloodborne. That if you're presenting yourself as just completely different who you are in real life, that gets very tiring. It's one of the reasons why I try to keep myself as one to one to how I behave in real life as I do here on YouTube.
Yeah, and that is an interesting distinction between entertainer and informer.
Mm-hmm.
An entertainer has to be someone who's different. I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost possible to be a person who is 100% entertainment. And yeah, putting on a persona. I mean, that's what you get. All the talk show hosts and celebrities, they all have to put on a face when they go on TV, because that's, I mean, it's kind of hard to polish a personality that's raw.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you do. Some people just have to do that if that's what they want to,
Mm-hmm.
if that's the entertainment they want to provide. Me, I just kind of blathered on, and that was just how I wanted to do it. But like, yeah, coming up with a personality, sticking to it, that's kind of a very professional, like,
Mm-hmm.
actor thing to do. And I don't know how many people can actually stick to something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's the one gal, and I forget her name. The show Haters Back Off on Netflix was about her,
Miranda something.
something, and it
Yeah.
just feels like that particular personality would be really hard to keep up for that long. But
Yeah.
hey, props to her for doing it.
Mm-hmm. Now, taking this back to the YouTuber and IGN for a second, I think one thing that I want to talk about is kind of that transition that we've seen. Because one of the big things that a lot of YouTubers and streamers have done is transition into kind of making, getting a real job at a major site or getting mentioned on Kotaku, Destructoid, and so on and so forth. I know there have been several YouTubers who have gotten their start doing something weird on YouTube or getting noticed, and then they immediately transition into becoming an IGN personality, and then they are never seen again on YouTube. And it's one of those very weird things about trying to make that transition, because it is different doing this compared to doing something more in person. I think a lot of YouTubers and even streamers, I think, struggle with that. That it's very easy when you're in your own controlled environment like this to make whatever content you want to, moderate your channel, to do stuff like that. But when you're no longer, the top dog, or you're just now like another peg in the machine, and now you're excited to do a lot more than that, I think it becomes a different feel.
Oh, for sure, and I see that in just in the games industry in
Mm-hmm.
general. You see people who are indie game developers who are swallowed up by a larger company. And I saw this at Disney. I forget the name of the game. It was, oh gosh, this is a mobile game, and it hit. And and the guy was hired out. His little company was bought by Disney, and so he kind of worked in a cubicle not far from where I worked. And super nice guy, but at the same time, it's like how different his life is now. Um, it's a whole different experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're the master of your own domain, and
Oh yeah.
almost literally. And like, then you transition to this thing where you're just, yeah, like, exactly like you say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a different culture, and I know a lot of people would experience culture shock.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
suddenly you're answering to somebody, suddenly you have
Mm-hmm.
deadlines that are for reasons that you've never conceived of before. And suddenly your people are telling you to integrate new features that you never had any interest in before. So it's just a weird thing. And when someone comes to you with that offer, it might be very tempting to just take it because it's like, oh, I've arrived, and this is the big time for me, and it's just it's a hardship afterwards, and I don't know how you'd recover from that because then it feels like you have to start from scratch again to get your base back.
Mm-hmm.
All bow to the mighty dollar.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember hearing about the Epic Mealtime, and then they just disappeared. I think there was another show on Nickelodeon, Dude Perfect. I think they were also another YouTuber that made that jump as well.
I've watched some of their videos. It's so strange that the videos that they do, how they just keep like. Do you know much about Dude Perfect?
Other than watching like 20 seconds of the show, no.
That's probably all you need. Their whole thing is making that perfect like basketball shot only times 10. So they must spend hours hitting that one like trying it again and again until they get it just right, and that's like 3 seconds of content. So it was such a weird channel that they have.
But yeah, we're seeing like talking about like YouTubers getting to the big time again. A lot of people view YouTube as not so much as a business, but more or less a stepping stone into doing something else. Because we've seen, again, a lot of people start on YouTube, and then they'll and then all of a sudden you'll see them on TV, or you'll see them on a major site, or so on and so forth. I know Disney has been calling from YouTube for like some of their previous shows. I think they had one of the Logan brothers, or Jake Paul, I think that's his name. He was on one of the Disney shows for a little bit until he said something or his brand stuff got in the way. And that's what we were talking about earlier with, that culture shock of, you're no longer allowed to say, whatever the hell you want. No, when you're owned by Disney, it's a different story.
Yeah, and it's funny because I really want to not do this, but I just have to mention the whole esports thing again. I can't imagine it's not the culture shock they have. It's you're NBA 2K player, you're a Smash Brothers player, you're a League player, and then suddenly you're on the big stage and you can't swear, you can't. I mean, you have to wear a uniform, you have to be in front of people and do interviews and do community service and all that kind of thing. And so you, as a person, have to just morph into something that is more presentable.
Yeah.
And so. I don't know how people do it. I don't know because I was always the cog in the machine. I was never not the person who can't go to a job and just be part of it because I'm a big team person. I like being a part of a team, and so that's never been tough for me. But for people who are who do not necessarily fit into teams and who do that kind of thing. And boy, we got off topic, haven't we?
Yeah.
Oh my God! But yeah,
you knew it was going to happen.
It's tough. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So plagiarism. But I mean, maybe that's what leads into it, right?
Yeah.
To try
that stress of trying to copy. Wait, this is the decent haircut. I don't know what else. I only have so much hair I can work with here. I do say though that at some point I would like to get a Peter Capaldi's hair from Doctor Who. That would be like my dream haircut. That all puffiness right there.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I don't know Doctor Who very well, and I don't know the actor's name certainly, but I know exactly who you were talking about as soon as you. I mean, I've already, I'm good with it now. It's nothing.
But getting back on topic, like as we were saying, when you're trying to make that jump from, I would if I let my hair grow too far, then I get like what's called the Jufro. But I don't think anyone wants to see that. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in a few months. But getting back to the topic at hand, like when we see that jump from YouTube or Twitch to another platform, it becomes a lot more of a different story. Because again, you are no longer just that nameless voice. You are now someone who's being propped up, as you just said, Rob, when it comes to esports. I've heard stories. Other Josh has told me, horror stories about the fighting game community and the stuff that goes on at tournaments, and that stuff would never fly, at like an E-League or any televised event. I mean, just imagine if I don't know, let's say a football event or even like NBA, that after a successful score, one of the players just starts screaming and cursing and calling the other team all manner of names. It doesn't matter how great you are at basketball, you would be thrown out, almost immediately. And oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say the one interesting thing, and I wonder if more sports are gonna start to do this. The 2K league we're a part of allows a little bit of trash talking, and by a little bit I mean they will shout at each other. But like as soon as they start dropping f bombs, like they would be thrown out in a heartbeat if they swore once on the microphone. And the amount of restraint that takes for some of these younger folks, I can't imagine.
Especially like what we see like in the UFC, like the MMA fighters when they get out of control like that.
Yeah, someone throwing chairs at a train or a bus, for example. What's his face? I can't remember his name.
But taking this again, once again, we keep getting off track here about the YouTuber and plagiarism. Again, when we talk about that jump, it's a lot harder, I think, for a lot of people when you're no longer, as you say, the master of your domain.
Yeah.
To give you an example, at not this year, but I think 2017's E3, EA invited a bunch of YouTubers and streamers to be like co-hosts or commentators. And a lot of those people were just horrible on stage. And I think part of it is, I think there's two parts. One is that they're so used to that persona. Like we said, like when you're on YouTube or on Twitch, you are the master of whatever you're doing. So you can scream, you can curse, you can wear funny hats, or you name it, and people expect that. But when you're in a professional setting, it'll be like going to work and you're wearing a clown wig and a tutu to, do customer service at a bank. People aren't going to like that. And I think the other point is that it's very hard when you have to adhere to a unique to someone else's profession or somebody else's style. Like, to give you a case in point, like for me, I can talk, or I hope I can talk reasonably for 5 to 10 minute stretches when I do my presentations for 40 minutes to an hour. I don't need to take a break. I don't need to have jump cuts of me, talking like this, and then I'm immediately over here. You see, like, it's like the person spazzing out of control. But a lot of people have trouble keeping things coherent for more than a few seconds. And even with what I do with Adobe Premiere now and trying to edit, my voice after the video, I'm still talking for 3 to 5 minutes as a single thought before I will pause and then go into something else. Because if I don't do that, then it becomes very hard to just constantly stop and start yourself. But I know there are a lot of YouTubers who make use of that.
Yeah, and then interacting with another person. If you're forced into interacting with someone and you're part of a persona, and you're not good at necessarily on the fly improvisations, then you're probably gonna fail pretty hard.
Oh yeah, or you try and make it seem very forced. Like there's the woman who was at the E3 for this past year. I think she was also on EA or EA's thing, and like you can tell when someone is being genuine and when they're just, it just feels like they're either reading from a cue card or they're just, they're putting on that persona so thick that it doesn't seem like they're a real person.
Yeah.
Finish your thought.
Oh no, my thought was just going to be going back to like, and if you get to that point where, and then of course there's the editing, which I think had been mentioned a little bit. Like, if you're used to being able to polish yourself and airbrush your personality with Premiere, for example, that becomes a bit of a crutch, and it's hard to maintain that in real life.
Hey, Dragon. Yeah. Or I guess maybe what that means, of course, that for my next video, I'm going to edit digitize the afro on my head. We'll do that. No one will notice. It'll look completely like real hair there. But with the IGN issue and plagiarizing and stuff like that, again, it's very hard, I think, for a lot of people, especially for up-and-coming YouTubers, to try and keep themselves going like that. And like I hear from some of the smaller people who've been following me, they're saying like, how do you put out so much content in a week? And it is a lot of work. And, take that and then magnify it by the fact that you're now on IGN or Destructoid or Polygon. And it can become very painful or very stressful to keep that quota going. Because, as we said, you're no longer working on your own schedule. You're working on whatever company you're working at's schedule.
Yeah, it's like someone came up to you and said, okay, I want you to do a dissecting design on Yahtzee.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you'd be like, you might not have any idea where to start. It's like, it's Yahtzee. What do I need to say about it?
And you need to get it done in 3 days.
And so you copy someone else's. I mean, you wouldn't, obviously. No. But, I mean, if you are under that pressure, that's a reaction. It's not the right one, but it is a reaction, and that's probably what happened.
And I'm glad you brought up the word reaction there, Rob, because that takes us to the second half of this discussion. Because the person who, after they did some background checking and they were looking into him, they fired him from IGN. And I believe either yesterday or a few days ago, he made a public video or a public statement about what happened. And it went over as I think most people would expect. He said, I agree with IGN, but he didn't feel like he did anything wrong, and I think he also attacked the Kotaku reporter who originally reported on the issue as well, saying he was just mining for views.
Okay. I mean, let's say that that's true. I mean, it's Kotaku. That's their job. But, like, that doesn't mean it's not a story. Someone cheating it on the highest of levels, that's a story. I'm sorry. That's pretty funny.
And it also again goes back to what we've said, that when it comes to these issues being brought to light, a lot of people really don't have the skills, I think, to handle when things go bad like that. And as we've said before, when it comes to the internet, if you do anything bad, it will come back to bite you.
Oh yeah, it's there forever. That's the part that I think needs to be underlined for every young person out there who wants to get into YouTube and content creation. I always fear for, like, my nieces, for example, growing up in this super accessible entertainment or industry or technological marvels that we have, not realizing the security issues that we've all grown up with, because, well, like, not all of us necessarily, but I mean, I built computers because I had to. I learned how to hack some, like, memory things because I had to if I wanted to play video games. Like, knowing how computers work from the get-go, and knowing how people react, and knowing how the internet works on a basic level is very important, because when you say something and you can't take it back, the best you can do is apologize for it and just admit it. Certainly not doubling down on what you did wrong.
Yep, and it's definitely, I'm just reading the response on Kotaku about his reaction there. And yeah, it's one of those things where you really have to be humble at that point when you're caught, or I think what the expression is, you double down. When you do that, it just never works out for you. And I think this quote from Tom Marks, who's the IGN PC editor, I think is apt here. He said, "Just to be abundantly clear, plagiarism isn't a mistake, it's a choice." And that's, again, one of those things. Like, once you do something bad like that, it's very easy to keep doing it over and over again because you didn't get caught the first time.
Yeah. I mean, the whole plagiarism as choice is there can be a bit of a gray area there, and has been in the past. But yeah, certainly when you put something side by side and it's almost an identical copy, that's whether or not. And I will just throw that out there, giving people the benefit of the doubt, whether or not you did it on purpose, or if it was some kind of, like, subliminal thing. You got to admit that you were in the wrong. There's really nothing about it. Now, some people can get away with the whole doubling down thing, but not when you're just a cog in the IGN machine. Sorry, it's not going to work.
And they're still discussing the Arena.net writer who was fired, I think, a month ago for, firing back against a fan who offered her criticism as well.
Good.
And that's another topic for another day, I'm afraid. But
Well, not everyone can handle being hated on by fan bases as you and I, Josh.
yeah. But here's a little fun thing. Kotaku posted another review, allegedly from the guy who copied. This is a Metroid Samus Returns issue. So I'm going to read you the paragraphs here and see what you think. So this isn't the IGN reviewer. This is the website. So Samus Returns takes a hero in the franchise back to its roots, from level design that encourages exploration and satisfying enemy encounters to the traditional 2D platforming style that helped birth the term Metroidvania. So that's the review from the professional site. Here's his review that went up, looks like 5 days later. Samus Returns takes the legendary hero and franchise back to its roots, with everything from its satisfying enemy encounters and intelligent level design that encourages exploration to the traditional 2D action platforming style that literally helped define an entire genre of video games. So, and again, like once you start being that, once you get caught plagiarizing there, all these things start to come up into play. Like, again, people will start to look at you more closely, and I think that's what someone else said, that when it comes to plagiarism like this, you never just do it one time. It's the same thing for like when people get caught, doing insider trading or very illegal stuff like that. Like, it's never just I do it one time, then it's never again. It starts to become a history of behavior.
Yeah, one time is an accident, but if you find that second time, it's done. It's done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm just reading some more of it, and again, it sounds very similar. And this
when you hit those beats like that, it's just it's too obvious.
Like, even if it uses slight differences in the wording, the flow is the same.
Oh yeah.
And again, this goes back to our main point that this is why I don't read other reviews. I just let my own insane ramblings go first, and that way no one can say that they can't say I copied someone else's insanity there when it comes to my reviews.
Yeah, no, it's nuts. Like, that's the thing when you see that with comedians and that kind of thing. You'll see those YouTube videos, and yeah, the words are never identical, but the beats are always the same, and that's what's important, right? It's the order of what you say. It's substituting one word for another in a very obvious fashion.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like I could say about Chowjamark without having seen it. Have you shook his hand? I bet it's oily. That's still plagiarism.
Yep. And again, it's very easy to do this, as you said. Like, it's that whole when we talk about that analogy of copying someone else's homework when you're cloning somebody's game. That yes, you can change the graphics. Maybe instead of a bird, it's a pig, or instead of farming, you are running a co-op or anything like that. But if all the beats are the same, then it's almost the smoking gun. It also goes back when we talk about, or in another case, and now we're really getting off tangent for this one, when Huey Lewis tried to say that the Ghostbusters theme was ripping off one of, I think it was Power of Love or something else. Like, again, like in that case though, you can hear it's two distinctive beats and themes, so it's not really the same case. But like, I think there was a case with Vanilla Ice that I do not remember more of.
Oh, yeah, it's Ice Ice Baby, and it starts with Under Pressure.
Oh yeah,
that's it's the same bass theme that starts that's in Under Pressure that begins Ice Ice Baby, and his excuse was, oh no, it's different. There's the itty bitty ting. You can hear the ting in there.
Yeah, or even when we see, and then. In some cases, it's considered acceptable if it's a cover or if you're sampling someone else's work. Yeah. But that's not the same case here when it comes to a review or something that you're trying to pass off as your own original take on a project or on a game.
Oh, yeah. I have a huge beef with the movie Frozen. They stole a comic line from Arrested Development, in a very blatant way. And I believe that they called it out as, being, I forget the term, like alluding to it, or giving it kind of a tip of the hat. And I'm like, well, in a throwaway line, then that's sure, or in the background, great, an Easter egg. But when it's when it's a part of the biggest song in the movie, well, then that's theft. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And again, as you said, some people can get away with it, but in most cases, though, if you start down that path, you're basically just leading a trail of breadcrumbs to your eventual caught, or capture, I should say.
Yeah.
But
yes,
I don't think there's anything else we can really say about this topic, though, just because it's not something that we both like to really engage with on a day-to-day basis. Like,
right.
Like I said, I don't really care about YouTube drama or stuff like that. I try to avoid that. And yeah, like Donut County, I think that was another one as well. And yeah, it just gets very tricky sometimes. But at the end of the day, though, I think this will be our final thoughts, and then we'll go to our Weird Games segment. That you can really stretch the line of, spiritual successor or copying someone in just about any industry or field. But when you start copying the beats, or, essentially the foundation or DNA, that's when it becomes very troublesome. Like you said, like, if I say, or I would challenge that if he shook his hand, I bet it's greasy, I could say something along the lines of, that guy's hand that I just shook, it was very greasy. Like, it's very easy to start copying someone else's beats like that, because you already have that foundation to start with. And then if you just go from there, you just lose your entire voice. And I guess as our final point, when it comes to game journalism these days, with how everybody is so critical of it, thanks to, Gamergate and so on and so forth, people really do have to mind their P's and Q's these days, or it's going to come back to bite you.